In this week's drive, we see what Cadillac says is the best there is, go racing with the very, very wealthy, realize that BMW isn't quite so boring after all, and find out that you're never too old to start racing. All this and more in this week's Drive. We start this week with a look at the command center of every Formula One car, the steering wheel. What the driver holds in his hands is much more than just a direction finder. From here, the driver can make large and small adjustments on a minute-by-minute basis if need be. Race engineers in the pits can monitor the car's performance, but they can't make any changes by remote control. That's down to the man in the hot seat.
It's an opportunity for the driver to have an influence on what the car is doing. You can adjust certain things from the steering wheel to do with the electronics or the car's software. You can alter the traction control, change the engine electronics, or reduce the revs. You can do all of these things, and in some circumstances they can be extremely important in a race. But you can well imagine that it's not always that easy for the drivers, as when you're pushing a Formula One car to the limit, you actually have other things to worry about rather than pressing some button or other.
When there's a close fight for places, drivers don't have time to fiddle around with knobs and buttons. But the top drivers work closely with their engineers and know exactly where everything is intuitively.
Really, they have this BMW thing in the middle of the steering wheel, and I really gotta look down if I want to see anything else. I kind of know, I can tell you what each button is without even looking.
None of the teams will admit precisely what each button and knob does, apart from the gear-shifting levers or paddles behind the wheel. Everything else is kept top secret. But what is known is that drivers can adjust the engine's electronics to boost power or save fuel, traction control and brake bias. They can engage a pit lane speed limiter, and new functions are being added all the time.
You get used to it very quickly. When something new gets added each year, you need a day to test it, but then you know where everything is and it's no longer a problem. Anyway, there are plenty of straights where you can try things out and make changes.
As they drive away from the pits to the grid at the start of the race, the car's settings are as good as they can be. But later on, changing conditions might mean that altered settings are needed. The driver might need to have a softer power delivery if it starts to rain, or cut back on revs if the engine gets hot. His pit crew will give him step-by-step directions over the radio.
He doesn't need to know those details. What we will tell him is, go to this menu option, go to this section of the menu and type in or select no or disable on a button, so he doesn't even know what has happened on the car. All he knows is he has to do this instruction.
Each steering wheel is handmade and customised for the individual driver. No two are the same, and needless to say, they're very expensive. Details are confidential, but don't expect change from $20,000.
Considering that the steering wheel is a sort of computer, this computer is programmed differently, driver by driver. And that depends by the fact that everyone prefers to play on this device in a different way. So if you see the steering wheel of Rubens and Michael, basically they are the same, but the functionality are completely different.
Road car steering wheels are following suit, although their controls are a little more ordinary. Usually they're limited to cruise control, sound system, perhaps communications too. But in Formula One, drivers have to know how to get the best out of their machines, and like in any other sport, adapting quickly is the key to success. The Indianapolis 500 is a once-a-year speed fest with open-wheeled single-seaters screaming around the 2.5-mile oval at speeds approaching 230 miles an hour. And out in front to start them off is the pace car, once again a modified Chevrolet Corvette. What do race organisers look for in a pace car?
You have to have a vehicle that's capable of high speed and controlling the crowd and the field at that particular moment. It's got to be able to go at a moment's notice. It's got to be absolutely fail-safe and be prepared to slow down the field and pace the race in its proper duties.
This may involve idling for long periods of time and then instantly hitting the circuit following on-track incidents to keep the racing cars lined up, difficult at today's high speeds.
The interesting thing about the pace car, it's almost like you're on-track referee. No different than you have an official in an NBA game or a referee at a football game. They manage the event, they manage the participants. The pace car is actually the on-track arm of the officials.
Corvettes have paced Indy for 6 years. They're popular because not a lot of work has to be done to get them ready for race day.
Part of the duty of a pace car is to accelerate very quickly. You've got to get out in front of the traffic. They put the light package on, they put a little bit less restrictive exhaust, not because it's not fast enough already, but because I think people like to hear that V8 engine. Other than that, really, you could take a Corvette off the showroom floor and make it a pace car out here. It'll do fine.
Proving this is more than just a ceremonial job, during the last 2 Indy 500 races, the pace cars led the field for over 20% of the 400 laps. We go to a very different kind of motorsporting event now, where enthusiasts hurl priceless cars around the track. This is the first round of the Ferrari Maserati Historic Challenge at the Vallelunga circuit close to Rome. On the track first were 10 Group C cars, sports cars and prototypes equipped with disc brakes. From the start, the number 90 Ferrari 412 from 1996 takes the lead. In second and third positions are 2 512 BB Le Mans, Italian Massimo Sordi ahead of Frenchman François Degas. Behind the leading trio, a group of short-wheelbase 250s. In fifth place, a 1964 Ferrari 206 Dino SP driven by Harry Leventis. At the halfway point of the 15-lap race, there was a brief challenge for Peter Hardman's lead, but no change. The only real concern was the overtaking of tail-enders. Hardman won from Massimo Sordi and François Degas.
Yeah, no, we started well, yeah, definitely. And then he started to pull me in a bit, and then we caught traffic, and it was a lot of it. You know, not many cars on the circuit, but they're all spread out as we started to catch them up. And it kept me awake all the time, I'm sure.
The race went better than I expected, because yesterday the car did not run well. We had fuel problems.
The second race combined Group A, the oldest single-seaters, and Group B, sports cars with drum brakes from the 50s. Leading was German Peter Heuberger in his 1956 Maserati 250F. German Urs Müller in the 1938 Maserati 6CM fought for third with the only woman in the race, Giulia de Baldanza in a 1951 Maserati A6 GCM. At the wheel of the Ferrari 500 TR4 is Swiss driver Giancarlo Galeazzi. American Steve Dudley in the 1959 3-litre 12-cylinder Ferrari 250 and the 57 2-litre Maserati 200S of Massimo Sordi fought it out over several laps wheel to wheel, but Sordi retired on the 5th lap. After 14 laps, it was Heuberger from Müller and Giulia de Baldanza.
I felt very good. The car was okay, and the car was fast, but not fast enough because it is too weak on the straight. But the car is lighter, and so we had a big battle with this Ferrari.
What do I feel? Nothing. I just like to. I just think of my car and of my lines and trying to do my best of myself.
I'm very happy because the car ran very well. It's an ideal car for this circuit. In the chimney corner, I slid on what I thought was an oil patch left by another car, but in fact I slipped on water coming out of my own radiator. We started with this Maserati Day in Vallelunga because Maserati accounts for 50% of the historical cars of the European Challenge. It is a great championship. It begins in Vallelunga, then we go to Spa, Donington and Nürburgring. They are historic circuits at the same time as other historical championships. For this season, the cars which made an official request for a certificate of authenticity have been allowed to participate. For the racing cars, it's very difficult to obtain a precise certificate. Certification has existed since September of last year. It's a program of the Ferrari Maserati Group, which of course is intended to protect the owners of historical cars against forgers.
In the second race for Group A and B the next day, Peter Heuberger again grabbed an early lead, just as he had in the first round. With a few problems from the day before repaired, all the cars were ready to race again, but some drivers obviously aren't. The Dutchman Jan Beekens trailed the group with his 1955 Ferrari 500 TR. Some of the races were more intense. These two are scrapping for 6th place. In the lead, untouchable over 14 laps, Heuberger is still setting the pace, with his 50-year-old Maserati winning at an average speed of 117 kilometers an hour.
It's a pleasure for an old man, 68-year-old, to race a car almost 50 years old, who was the winner in Monaco 50 years ago with Moss. It's a pleasure. You cannot imagine the joy you can have with it.
As in the first Group C heat, the Ferrari 412 of Peter Hardman ran away into the lead. In second position was the Ferrari 512BB of Massimo Sordi. Sixth was last year's winner, Belgian Vincent Gay, in a 1960 Ferrari 250 GT, sporting the yellow band of the Francochamps stables which ran so many Ferraris. In third place, a 1980 Ferrari 512BB at Le Mans, adapted for endurance racing, still in the colours of the era. Hardman wins at an average speed of 140 kilometres an hour from Sordi and Degas.
He did a very good job.
See you in Spa.
It's a vehicle intended to compete with the very best that Europe and Japan have to offer, but it comes in a distinctively American package. This is the all-new Cadillac STS. STS is the next step in Cadillac's resurgence. This is the 6th generation of Cadillac's entry into the luxury performance segment, but it's their first rear-wheel drive entry in this segment for more than 25 years.
3 levels are offered, from a 3.6-litre V6 that starts at $41,000 to a $62,000 V8 all-wheel drive STS with a long list of included options.
The STS is taking Cadillac up to that next step that the CTS moved it into. And here you've got a very premium luxury sedan that I think is going to compete with the very best in the world.
Cadillac needs a new flagship hero car, and this is it.
As the people get in there and get a chance to drive it, they're going to be very excited about the performance, the ride and handling, but they're also going to be taken by the feeling of quality and craftsmanship that we've designed into this vehicle. We've really placed that high priority on that. It's the attention to detail, it's the fit and finish, it's the quality of the materials, and it's the look.
The STS is much quieter than the Seville models that preceded it. Cadillac have been generous with the sound-deadening materials, which no doubt contribute to the car's 1,900-kilogram weight.
When you combine it overall, it's an exhilarating experience from a performance standpoint. It's a bold experience from an overall exterior design standpoint. And so you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting the best combination of performance and luxury, and there's no compromises.
BMW must be quaking at the thought of an American-made luxury performance sedan. If you've ever wondered about the future of things like health, transport, computers, and even schoolyard games, you could have seen it all recently in San Francisco, where Wired magazine brought together some of the greatest and most outrageous future technologies.
We went around to R&D labs and universities around the world and said, show us the stuff that is blowing you away. Show us the stuff that no one has seen before, but is working. It was very important to us that it wasn't make-believe, just ideas about the future, but that these were working prototypes.
There was the serious and the weird and the seriously weird, but many had real-world important applications, like General Motors' display of hydrogen-powered fuel cell vehicles.
All of these technologies here at NextFest are either resolving a problem or creating a new opportunity. If you think about it, in the world today, only a small percentage of people actually have personal mobility. In the future, that's going to increase. GM's role is to provide this in a way that will ultimately be beneficial not only to society, but also to the environment. Here on display, we've got the Autonomy, the Highwire, and the Hydrogen 3. All of these vehicles feature hydrogen-powered fuel cells. We brought it here in order to show people that not only are we engineering these vehicles for the future, but we're now putting them on the road for demonstration.
The editors at Wired magazine aren't making any predictions about which of these technologies have real futures. They do say, however, that this event was important to inventors and manufacturers for the public feedback they get on their products. As for its part, General Motors says it's aiming to establish the commercial viability of hydrogen-powered fuel cell technology by 2010. The K1200S is the new sports bike from BMW and the second machine after the R1200 GS all-terrain tourer to reflect their new design philosophy of creating new motorcycles with more power, less weight and more agility. The K1200S also represents a break with BMW's traditional quirky engine designs. For over 80 years they've built flat twin engines from 450 to 1200 cc's and about 20 years ago added 1-litre flat fours, but with all 4 cylinders lying down in a line, not opposed. The original K100 has grown to 1200 cc's in sport, touring and somewhere in between. For a while they built a modular 750 triple too, but that's long gone, and a 650 single using an engine from Rotax is now the smallest BMW built. However, the new bike has its 4 cylinders across the frame and canted forward from vertical in a pattern that's been the norm on Japanese bikes for over 30 years. The 4-cylinder, inline, 1157cc capacity engine generates 123 kilowatts at 10,250 RPM, and a maximum torque of 130 Newton-meters is achieved at 8,250 RPM, although more than 70% of it is available from just 3,000 RPM. The bike also features the most sophisticated engine management system currently available on any motorcycle. Unique for a production bike in this class is the cassette-type 6-speed gearbox. Other BMW trademarks are still very evident. The shaft final drive, the unique duo-lever front suspension, and features like ABS brakes and heated handlebars. Ask a Formula One designer which should be changing on MotoGP bikes, and the answer would almost certainly include the telescopic fork front suspension and chain used for the final drive. Formula One design influence is increasingly seen in the 4-stroke MotoGP era and has alternatives for both. Wishbone suspension allows many more setup options and is geometrically superior, while composite drive shafts transfer huge power reliably and efficiently. Neither has shown up in MotoGP, but both and other high-tech developments are on the new BMW. The duo-lever front suspension gets electronic adjustment, a world first. The system resembles a square made up of 2 parallel longitudinal links in the frame so that they can swivel and allow up and down movement of the front wheel. The wheel carrier is connected via 2 ball joints and performs the steering action. A link connects to the central strut, which provides suspension and damping. BMW claim high rigidity, low weight and an ideal lift curve. With the electronic suspension adjustment option, the spring preload and damping can be adjusted at the press of a button on the handlebars. The bike's electrics are also state-of-the-art. Various functions use a so-called CAN bus technology, which has a single wire linking various components and is claimed to be simpler than normal multi-strand wiring systems and offers diagnostics capabilities. The K1200 also gets a catalytic converter exhaust and integral brakes, made popular by Moto Guzzi 30 years ago, and an optional high-pressure ABS anti-lock system. Integral brakes see both front and rear wheels braked by a single hand or foot control. The BMW uses servos to boost braking pressure. The bike boasts an electronic anti-theft immobilizer and a power socket for accessories like heated gloves. Bespoke luggage, both hard and soft, is available as an extra cost option, as is a satellite navigation system. And then there's the styling. There are many ways to describe BMW motorcycle styling, some more polite than others, but one of them is not humdrum. Adjectives like unusual, quirky, odd, weird, edgy and plain but ugly have been seen in the motorcycle press. But it's worth noting that the same was said of the BMW K1 15 years ago, and now it's a two-wheel design icon. The first machines to be built at the Spandau factory just outside Berlin will be the two multicolour variants, blue and white and yellow and graphite. Two single-colour models, blue metallic and granite grey metallic, will be available later. When it goes on sale, it will be very fast and very expensive. Perhaps the easiest way of making sure that only experienced riders get to aim one. And finally, we go to Zandvoort in the Netherlands for a very unusual day's racing. Not racing bikes or cars, but battery-powered electric buggies were competing on the track. Dozens of old-age pensioners from 12 Dutch nursing homes were trying out brand-new rear-wheel drive buggies on the track before racing each other across an obstacle course. According to Jan Romme, organiser of the Dutch Championship for Electric Buggies, the event hopes to promote greater mobility for the elderly.
1 million people are lonely in the Netherlands, of which 200,000 people extreme lonely, which means that they only get one visit a month or less. Now we ask the Dutch population always to go and visit old people, go send them a card, give them a telephone call, which is very, very important. But old people can do themselves a lot also to get out of the house. And mobility in that is very, very important. And we think such a buggy, which is called Scootmobiel in the Netherlands, is a very simple means, very safe means to get out and about to the shops, to your friends, and keep your social network open.
The buggies are fitted with comfortable seats, armrests, handlebars and shopping baskets, and the pensioners were quick to get familiar with them and soon lined up to race each other in the first Dutch Championship. With the top speed of just 12 kilometers an hour, the race was more about skillful maneuvering than speed. One of the entrants enjoying a perm-rustling day at the races was 82-year-old Nel Edelsharp. The buggies range in price from €2,500 for a compact model going 7 kilometers an hour to about €5,500 for a top-of-the-range vehicle with a maximum speed of 15 kilometers an hour. The contestants, most of them in their 70s and 80s, had to drive twice around a 250-metre slalom course of plastic cones, over speed bumps and tilting wooden ramps, and pick up a tennis ball from a cone while driving by. Some novice buggy drivers found that simply keeping them going straight was a bit of a problem. In a country that has one of the highest life expectancies in the world and is home to the world's oldest woman, demand for electric scooters is high, with up to 75,000 people owning one.
I only dropped one ball, the first ball, which means that I'll get a 10-second penalty. But I was quite ahead of the others, so I decided to take the penalty and not go back.
After recording the best time over the course, the Rotterdam team, led by Nel, clinched the first prize of a new electric buggy, a trophy and a bottle of champagne.
The faster the better. I can't stand driving slowly.
The contest kicked off a pilot project in which old people's homes are given 2 scooters for common use for 6 months. The fund will then launch a campaign hoping to convince companies to sponsor nursing homes by paying for scooters. The event pushed the mobility message in a nation with one of the highest average ages in the world. So, whether you're holding the world in your hands, getting around without petrol, or chasing the horizon on your new toy, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.